The sun was a warm, sleepy eye in the endless blue sky as Miss Alara, a traveling schoolmistress, rode her horse, Dusty, across the wide-open prairie. The rhythmic creak of her saddle leather was a familiar song, joining the soft whisper of the wind through the tall, golden grass. Miss Alara hummed a gentle tune, a quiet melody that always brought a sense of calm to her heart, no matter how lonely the road stretched before her. It was a hymn her grandmother had taught her, full of comfort and hope. Dusty's hooves kicked up small puffs of dust with each steady step. The air smelled of dry earth and distant sagebrush. Miss Alara's eyes, bright and kind, scanned the horizon. She wasn't just looking for the next town. She was looking for children, for minds eager to learn, for places where her little chalkboard and stack of worn books could make a difference. Her simple calico dress fluttered a little in the breeze, and her bonnet kept the harsh sun from her face. Sometimes she'd sing a bit louder, letting her voice carry on the wind, a hopeful sound in the vast, quiet land. She imagined it reaching far, far away, like a friendly hand waving hello. This peaceful journey was her life, a journey marked by the quiet comfort of her own voice and the steady rhythm of Dusty's stride. She knew the frontier could be harsh, but in these moments, with her song and the open sky, it felt like home. The peaceful rhythm of Dusty's hooves and Miss Alara's soft humming was suddenly broken. A low rumble, like distant thunder, began to shake the very ground beneath them. Miss Alara pulled Dusty to a halt, her hand shading her eyes as she peered ahead. The hum died on her lips. The rumble grew louder, faster, turning into a roar that vibrated through her bones. Then she saw them, a dark wave of movement on the horizon, growing larger by the second. It was a huge herd of cattle, hundreds of them, their eyes wide with wild fear. They were stampeding, a rushing, bellowing river of muscle and hoof, heading straight for the sparkling creek where Miss Alara had just spotted a group of children playing. Little figures, no bigger than toys from this distance, were splashing and laughing, completely unaware of the terrifying danger thundering towards them. The ground shook violently now, making Dusty nervously stamp his feet. Miss Alara could almost feel the hot, panicked breath of the cattle on the wind, the air filled with the scent of dust and frightened animal. Time seemed to slow. She saw a little girl, her bright red dress a splash of color by the water, just as the first few cows, their huge bodies slick with sweat, pounded closer. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped Miss Alara, but then her eyes narrowed. She had to do something. Her voice, her steady, comforting voice, was her only weapon against the coming storm. The roar of the stampede grew louder, a terrifying wall of sound. Miss Alara knew there was no time to ride to the children, no time to shout over the thunder of hooves. But there was her voice, the same voice that had hummed gentle tunes, the same voice that carried comfort, now had to carry strength. Taking a deep breath, she opened her mouth and began to sing. It wasn't a gentle hum now. It was a strong, clear hymn, the very one her grandmother had taught her, a song about finding peace in the storm. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, that saved a wretch like me. Her voice, usually soft as a summer breeze, cut through the terrible noise of the stampede. It was steady, unwavering, a beacon in the chaos. The children by the creek, who had been frozen in terror, their eyes wide with disbelief at the charging beasts, suddenly heard it. The little girl in the red dress, just moments from being engulfed, lifted her head. The other children, huddled together, turned their frightened faces towards the source of the sound. It was strange, a human voice so strong against the roar of hundreds of animals. The words were clear, even through the thundering hooves and the panicked bellows of the cattle. It was a sound of calm, a promise of safety in the middle of danger. The cattle, driven by blind fear, still surged forward, but Miss Alara's voice, like a strong rope, began to pull at the edges of the chaos, trying to part the wave. The hymn flowed from Miss Alara, strong and clear, weaving itself into the chaotic rumble of the stampede. It was as if her voice, full of hope and steady purpose, created a strange, invisible wall. The lead cattle, their eyes still wild and cloudy with fear, seemed to hesitate, their powerful bodies shifting. Instead of crashing straight into the children, the front of the herd began to split, like a river flowing around a rock. A few cows veered left, then more followed, their heavy hooves churning the earth. Others, equally confused by the strange, calm sound, veered right. The children, still wide-eyed and frozen, watched in silent awe as the thundering wall of beef parted around them, leaving a narrow, dusty space where they stood. They could feel the hot breath of the cattle, smell their fear, but the beasts were passing them by. As the main wave of the stampede swept past, leaving behind only the dust and the fading rumble, Miss Alara changed her song. Her voice, still strong but now filled with urgent kindness, called out to the children. "Children, come this way. Quickly now." She pointed with her hand, guiding them with her voice and her arm toward a deep, narrow cut in the earth nearby, a gulch she had noticed earlier. The children, still shaky but no longer frozen, began to move, drawn by the steady call. The little girl in the red dress was the first, her small legs pumping as she ran towards Miss Alara's voice, trusting it completely. One by one, they scrambled down into the gulch, a natural ditch that offered a safe, hidden place until the danger had fully passed. Miss Alara kept singing a soft, reassuring tune now, until every child was out of sight. Days later, the dusty air of the gulch still held the faint scent of fear and dry earth, but it was now mixed with the soft, sweet sound of children's voices. The little ones, safe and sound, were humming. Not loud, boisterous songs, but quiet, thoughtful tunes. It was Miss Alara's hymn, or parts of it, sung in tiny, off-key voices. The little girl in the red dress, whose name was Lily, sat tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick, softly singing, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." Her eyes were still wide when she thought of the thundering cattle, but a warm feeling filled her chest when she remembered the clear, strong voice that had saved them. The older children, like young Thomas, who had been frozen with fear, would hum the melody while gathering dry twigs for a small cooking fire. He remembered how Miss Alara's voice had cut through the roar of the stampede, a brave, steady sound that made him feel like he could move his feet again. They talked about it in hushed whispers, the miracle of the voice that had turned the angry herd. They knew, deep in their young hearts, that Miss Alara's song had saved them. It wasn't just a song, it was a shield, a guiding light. They had been stranded, far from home, but Miss Alara had found them, not with a horse or a lasso, but with her voice. The memory of that brave song was a comfort, a secret strength they carried with them, like a warm stone in their pockets. It made the gulch, once a place of fear, feel safe and almost like a temporary home. The day after the children were led from the gulch and reunited with their worried families, Miss Alara made a big decision. She had been a traveling schoolmistress for years, always moving, but something about these children and the way her voice had bound them together made her want to stay. She decided to build a schoolhouse right there, close to the creek, a place where the children could learn and be safe. The news spread quickly, and soon, hands were ready to help. The children, remembering Miss Alara's kindness and the bravery of her song, were the first to offer. Young Thomas, strong for his age, helped carry logs. Lily, her red dress now a bit dusty but her spirit bright, gathered smaller stones. They worked tirelessly, their small voices rising in song as they toiled. It wasn't always a perfect hymn. Sometimes it was just a cheerful tune, but the singing was constant. It was a happy sound, mixing with the thud of hammers and the rustle of leaves. Miss Alara taught them how to measure wood and mix mud for the walls. She showed them how to smooth the rough edges of planks. With every nail hammered and every board placed, the schoolhouse grew. The children poured their gratitude and their memories of her brave voice into every part of it. The schoolhouse wasn't just made of wood and nails. It was made of shared experience, of trust, and of the powerful bond forged in a moment of great danger. The scent of fresh-cut pine and damp earth filled the air, and above it all, the children's voices, humming and singing, made the little building feel less like a structure and more like a warm, welcoming home, ready for stories and learning. Life at the little schoolhouse by the creek was filled with laughter and learning. The children thrived under Miss Alara's gentle teaching, their voices often rising in song during lessons or playtime. But one sunny afternoon, a shadow fell over their peaceful world. A mean-looking man rode up to the schoolhouse on a dusty, snorting horse. He was big and rough, with a scowl etched onto his face and a loud, booming voice. This was Mr. Grime, and he was not happy. "What's all this nonsense?" he bellowed, dismounting with a heavy thump that made the ground tremble. "This land is mine. I bought it fair and square. You, woman, and these brats need to pack up your little schoolhouse and get out." Miss Alara stepped forward, her calm face showing no fear, though her heart beat a little faster. "Sir, this land has been used by the community for generations. We built this school for these children." Mr. Grime just laughed, a harsh, grating sound like stones grinding together. "Community? I don't see no community. I see land I can make money from. This schoolhouse is in my way. I'll tear it down if I have to. You hear me? Get out." He stomped his boot, kicking up dust, and glared at the children, who had gathered behind Miss Alara, their faces pale and scared. He shouted, his voice rough and angry, trying to make them tremble. The pleasant scent of wood and chalk in the schoolhouse was now mixed with the bitter smell of his anger. He wanted to scare them, to make them run, but the children, though afraid, remembered something important. They remembered a voice that had been stronger than a stampede. Mr. Grimes' angry shouts filled the air, making the little schoolhouse seem to shrink. Miss Alara stood firm, but her eyes scanned the frightened faces of the children behind her. She knew they were scared, just as they had been when the cattle thundered toward them. But then, a small, clear voice, no louder than a bird's chirp, began to sing. It was Lily, the little girl in the red dress, her eyes still wide, but her chin held high. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound," she sang, her voice trembling just a little. Then, young Thomas, remembering the bravery of Miss Alara's song that day, joined in, his voice a bit deeper, steadier. Others followed, one by one, their small voices weaving together. The sound was soft at first, almost swallowed by the vast prairie wind and Mr. Grimes' grumbling. But each child, remembering the power of that song, the way it had parted the angry herd, put all their courage into their notes. That saved a wretch like me. Their voices were small, yes, but they were brave. They stood together, a line of determined little faces, their eyes fixed not on the scary man, but on Miss Alara, their teacher, their protector. The song grew, gaining strength with each new voice. It wasn't the thundering roar of a stampede, but it was a different kind of power. It was the sound of unity, of children standing up for what they believed in, armed only with a hymn. The words of the song, full of hope and strength, filled the space between them and the angry man, building an invisible wall, just like it had done against the cattle. Mr. Grime had expected tears, screams, maybe even some arguing. He was ready for all of it, but he was not ready for this. He stood there, his jaw hanging a little, as the children's voices, small but steady, rose in song. His angry shouts died in his throat. He tried to speak, to yell again, but the words seemed to catch. The sound of amazing grace was not what he was used to. He was used to fear, to people backing down. He scowled, trying to look meaner, but the sound of their innocent voices, full of such quiet courage, was unsettling. He stomped his foot again, harder this time, but the children didn't flinch. Their eyes, wide and clear, were fixed on him, but their mouths kept singing. He could see the determination in their small faces, the unwavering spirit that shone through their song. He was a big, loud man, but against their united voices and their strong hearts, he felt small. What could he do? He couldn't shout over a hymn. He couldn't threaten children who were singing about grace and hope. He was a bully, and bullies don't know how to fight against something so pure and strong. He had no weapon against their steady melody, no answer to their quiet bravery. He looked from Miss Alara, standing tall and proud, to the line of singing children, and then back to the schoolhouse, which now seemed to glow with a warmth that pushed back against his cold anger. He scratched his head, completely at a loss. This was not how he planned for things to go. As Mr. Grimes stood there, confused and defeated, the children's singing grew stronger. It started as a ripple, then swelled into a wave of pure, clear sound. Just like Miss Alara's voice had cut through the roar of the stampede, guiding the cattle, so too did their combined voices now fill the air, pushing back against Mr. Grimes' anger. Lily's voice, no longer trembling, soared with confidence. Thomas's deepened, steadying the tune. Every child, remembering the feeling of safety that song had given them, poured their spirit into each note. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. The words were not just words, they were a shield. The melody was not just a tune, it was their courage made real. Mr. Grime, who had only known how to fight with shouts and threats, found himself with no weapon against such a powerful, peaceful force. He looked around, his face growing redder, but not from anger. He was simply at a loss. He grumbled a low, frustrated sound and kicked at a stone. He pulled his hat lower over his eyes, as if to hide from the sound, but followed him, wrapping around him. Finally, with a huff and a puff, Mr. Grime turned. He stomped back to his dusty horse, his shoulders slumped. He muttered something under his breath, something like, "Never seen such a thing," or "crazy kids." He hoisted himself onto his saddle, the leather groaning under his weight, and without another word, he turned his horse and rode away. He didn't look back. The children's singing, loud and triumphant, followed him until he was just a speck on the horizon, swallowed by the vast, quiet prairie. As Mr. Grimes' horse disappeared into the shimmering heat of the prairie, the children's hymn slowly faded, replaced by gasps and giggles of relief. Miss Alara watched him go, a gentle smile spreading across her face. She turned to her students, her eyes shining with pride. "Well done, children," she said, her voice soft but filled with deep feeling. "You were very brave." Lily ran to Miss Alara, hugging her legs tightly. "We sang your song, Miss Alara, the one that saved us from the cows." Thomas nodded, his chest puffed out a little. "It worked again. It made him go away." Miss Alara knelt down, gathering a few of them into a hug. "Indeed it did. Your voices, which were once saved by a song, have now saved our school. You showed great courage and unity." She looked around at the little schoolhouse, sturdy and warm, a beacon of learning and hope in the vast landscape. It was more than just wood and nails. It was a testament to their shared spirit. And so, with the unpleasantness behind them, the little schoolhouse on the prairie returned to its joyful rhythm. The children, feeling safe and strong, went back inside, their laughter echoing through the open windows. Miss Alara sat at her desk, and soon their voices rose again, not in fear or defiance, but in happiness. They sang familiar tunes, new songs, and, of course, their special hymn, their voices weaving together in perfect harmony. The scent of chalk dust and sunshine filled the air, and the sound of their singing carried on the gentle wind, a joyful melody across the wide-open land, a reminder that courage, kindness, and a united voice could overcome any challenge.